Hey guys, I'm Urizi. This story is all about what if Sakura's character was rewritten. A rewrite of Sakura, in which a blunt and eccentric OC is placed into the body of Sakura Haruno at the start of the series. Nothing at all could possibly go wrong. Before we proceed with the story, please like and subscribe to this channel if you liked the video, and don't forget to check the description for the other works of the author if you liked the story. Let's start. Chapter 7, Attempt 1 at Therapy no Jutsu. My fingers trailed down the delicate stitches on Haku's chest. Haku was sitting up in his bed, an exorbitant amount of pillows behind and around him, as well as many flowers, fruit baskets, and little knickknacks. Naruto had advertised to the people of Wave that it was Zabuza who had personally slain the evil tyrant, which earned the missing nin a big shiny pedestal to stand on above them. Not even a day later did they find out about his precious student, and in hopes of showing gratitude, the people showed up with many gifts for the duo. It was left unsaid that not even a week ago Zabuza and Haku had been out for Tajuna's head. "It looks like we're out of the woods," I finally said. Haku smiled warmly at me, and Zabuza let out a small gruffing noise to my right. The missing nin had played nursemaid to his student the past couple of days, allowing me to nurse his own wounds in the process, as well. He, too, sat in a bed with many fluffy pillows propped around him. No infection, and no signs of rejection. "You'll have to be careful for a while longer, but I feel pretty confident that in a couple days I'll be able to heal the wound shut and we can take out the stitches." "Thank you, Sakura-sensei," Haku politely said, a serene smile still on his face. "I owe you." I shushed him by smushing his cheeks together so his lips puckered out. "I know. No need to say it anymore, Haku. You know exactly how to thank me, if you choose to." Haku nodded his head, and I removed my hands. "Yes. I have thought it over, and I am very honored to be invited into your harem. I will gladly accept." I squealed. "Fantastic. How about you, Zabuza?" "I'm not joining some goddamn harem." "So that's a yes." Zabuza gave me a withering glare. "You're going to act as though I'm part of you harem, regardless of what I actually say, aren't you?" "Yes." Zabuza let out a long sigh. "I don't care anymore. We're even by this, you annoying Dr. Brat." I squealed in delight again, moving over and throwing my arms around his neck. "Get off, you stupid." "Shut up and accept my love and affection," I ordered him as I started to nuzzle. "I love you guys." "Die in a fire," Zabuza grouched, glaring balefully at the giggling Haku. He unhooked my arms around his neck and promptly shoved me away from him. I landed on my bum, still beside myself with happiness that I had successfully coerced two awesome people into my personal harem. I stood back up, beaming at both of my patients. "I'll let you two get some more rest. If you need me, I'll be in town at the clinic." "Of course, Sakura-sensei," Haku murmured. "Have a pleasant day." "You, too, cutie." Since the 2 days of Gato's demise, the town had transformed. Everyone rallied together to finish the bridge. Unfortunately, Kakashi and Zabuza's battle had caused some structural damage to the bridge, which pushed its completion date back another week, despite having numerous workers helping out. All of Gato's previous thugs were rounded up by the villagers, and Naruto and Sasuke, each thrown into the makeshift prison, to be awaiting whatever justice the village decided to award them. Gato's mansion was ransacked and the money was distributed fairly evenly. A large sum of it went to Zabuza and Haku as thanks for killing him, and another large portion actually came to us. Tajuna insisted paying us for doing a proper job. With the monopoly on Wave effectively destroyed, a few villagers sent out invitations to merchants to come to Wave in hopes of re-establishing a healthy economy. The village itself had an optimistic and cheerful atmosphere, with everyone frantically trying to repair what they could in hopes of enticing more merchants and other necessities. I was given Kakashi's permission to resume my post as their doctor, and much to my surprise and utter joy, he actually had Pakun sit with me. It would turn out that Pakun had learned anatomy with Kakashi, and was damn good at sniffing out infections. Not to mention I sincerely felt better having someone else supervise my work. Especially someone so unbelievably adorable and who would reward me for doing a good job by letting me squeeze his paws. Naruto and Sasuke still alternated guarding Tajuna. I wasn't sure what Sasuke did when he wasn't on guard duty, but I knew that Naruto helped around the village however he could when he wasn't on guard duty. Kakashi was another mystery. I would wake him each morning, examine him, and after giving my okay, I knew very well that he was only humoring me, and we both knew that he didn't need my permission to do anything. He left. Where to, I hadn't a clue, but Pakun was able to alert him if there was any kind of emergency, so I wasn't concerned too much about it. The clinic had been one of the first things the villagers had fixed up for me, and I had many wonderful people offer me their assistance whenever I needed it. One of the women actually made me another doctor's coat since my previous one had been ruined by the failed attempt to save those two men. I had my hair pushed back with my hitayate in order to keep the bangs out of my face. My hands worked quickly as I sutured a boy no older than myself. He had slipped on the rocks by the dock and split open his calf. It was deep enough to require stitches, but it didn't sever anything too important, or cause enough damage to warrant using my Shosen. Instead, I numbed the area and began my stitches. The boy watched me work with transfixed eyes, his friends flanking either side of him. "You're gonna have to tell your Ka-chan," I told him, neatly pressing the flabs of skin together while I worked. His face screwed up in obvious distaste, while the other boys snickered at him. "Can't you make it like it never happened, sensei? It's healthier to allow your body to regrow at its natural rate," I told him. "The wound isn't severe enough to warrant any more chakra aside from numbing. It won't even scar." He whined. "What? That's so lame. All this, and not only am I going to be killed by Ka-san, but I'm not even going to get a scar out of it." "If you want a scar so bad, just play with fire," I told him. Pakun wheezed out a laugh. "What kind of doctor tells her patient to play with fire?" "Only the best kind, of course," I told him flippantly. "There we go. Let me write you up a note so your Ka-chan knows how to take care of you." One of his friends sniggered. "Yeah. Wouldn't want him to get too much worse after she blisters his butt." That got a groan from my patient, and a snicker from the other friend. I reached over, pausing in my rapid writing, and sympathetically patted my patient. "After your spanking, be sure to ice your bum. Hi, sensei," the trio chorused. "On your way out, please send in my next patient." They all gave varying degrees of affirmation as they left. I popped my knuckles and stretched out in my creaky chair. The clinic was small, and I was only using one tiny room to take care of patients. It smelled musty, was almost entirely made of wood, and the floorboards were heavily stained. I loved it. As the next patient entered the room, I reached over and picked up Pakun and began to nuzzle the top of his head. Cutest puppy ever. Pakun accepted my love like the cute badass he was. "Good afternoon, sensei," greeted a beautiful young woman. She brushed back her long green hair and sat down on the bed. "Happy Cater Day, Nesan," I returned, smiling brightly at her. "How can I help such a pretty lady today?" She blushed. I'm late." "Oh," I wittily responded, reaching over and placing a hand over her lower abdomen. A heartbeat passed and I pulled back. "Congratulations, Nesan." Her eyes lit up and she let out a quiet gasp. "So I nodded my head. "You have a second chakra network developing inside of you. Let me consult my book and I can give you a due date, if you'd like." She nodded her head enthusiastically. "This is so wonderful. Yuri-chan will be so happy." "Congratulations again," I repeated, standing up and putting Pakun in my seat. I headed over to my backpack and rummaged through to try and find my book on the reproductive system. Ah, there it is. That was how my days went by for the remainder of our time in Wave. I would make my rounds on our team, including Zabuza and Haku, then I would spend the rest of my time at the clinic tending to whoever needed care. There were a couple more cases that required more expert hands than my own, but for the most part I was able to work independently with Pakun supervising. The day we were about to leave was the day that Haku was able to leave his bed. All of us had gathered at the end of the bridge with quite the send-off. Some of the younger children had woven a beautiful flower crown for me after I fixed their Ka-chan and Tio-yu-chan boo-boos. On the day of our departure, they had woven a fresh one for me that I wore proudly. It seemed like the entire village had gathered to send us off, With Zabuza and Haku right at the front, Haku was leaning on a single crutch. He was on severely strict orders to rest as much as possible. I would have put him in a wheelchair if I could. Kakashi stood the furthest away from our group, his hands in his pocket. Naruto and I easily and happily lapped up the attention, while Sasuke seemed more inclined to inching further and further away from the crowd of people. "We owe a lot to you," Tajuna said loudly, instilling a hush over the crowd. "Not only did you protect and help make this bridge, but through your efforts this village's greatest and longest nightmare is finally over." This caused a round of cheering and thunderous stomping behind him. Tajuna lifted his hand for silence again, smiling widely. "You helped us, healed our sick, and took care of us. Without you, none of this would be possible. Without you, we wouldn't have hope. Thank you, Shinobi of Konoha." In a gesture of our appreciation we decided to name the bridge Seven's Hope, so we may never forget the hope Team 7 has brought us. The crowd roared its approval. I took Naruto's hand and in perfect sync the two of us bowed to the crowd. Thank you very much." Ma, Kakashi said, placing a hand on the top of each of our heads. "We should be heading out. I want to reach Konoha before it gets dark." "Woohoo! Wait until Jiji hears about this," Naruto boasted, hopping from one foot to the other in excitement. I winked at Haku and Zabuza. "Don't miss me too much, you hot people, you." Haku laughed quietly, while Zabuza sneered at me. Haku hobbled towards us, an incredibly attractive smile on his face. "Thank you all for what you have done. I'm certain we will meet again one day, and I look forward to that day." "Oh, stop it," I said, lightly hitting his shoulder. "You're gonna make me blush with that kind of talk." A spark of amusement entered his eyes and faster than what I could process, he placed a warm kiss on my cheek. Naruto let out a gasp of sheer horror, while I got many catcalls from the crowd. A blush rose up to my cheeks. "You can do that again." Haku laughed. "I wouldn't want to keep you." "Have a safe trip, Sakura-chan." I sighed. "Just got my harem started up and I already have to abandon members for a while. Kakashi-sensei, I need a comfort hug." "You already had your hug for the day," Kakashi said patiently. "You'll have to wait until tomorrow." I whined. Sasuke sighed. "Can we leave now?" "And we're back," I said as we entered the gates of Konoha. My hand moved on its own and grabbed Kakashi's. "It's dark and scary at night. Walk me home, please." "Nope," Kakashi said cheerfully, yanking his hand out of my own like it was on fire. "Report to the Hokage's tower at 0600 tomorrow to give your reports. Later, minions." "I'll walk you home," Naruto offered happily after Kakashi disappeared in a puff of smoke. I beamed. "Excellent." I held out my arm. "This will give you good practice for when you're dating your future wife." Naruto hooked his arm through mine. "Who's that?" I patted his arm. "The same girl who currently has a crush on you." Naruto gasped. "Someone has a crush on me?" "Yes. And if you prove that you're mature enough to be a good boyfriend, I'll tell you who. This girl has had a crush on you since the first year of the academy. She believes you'll make the best Hokage, ever, even." "She sounds perfect," Naruto whispered in awe. "She is," I agreed. "Now walk me home like the gentleman I know you are deep down inside." "Yes, ma'am." I entered the kitchen around 5 the next morning, greeted by the smell of pork and eggs. Sakura's mother, Ka-chan, was making an omelette. She beamed when she saw me enter. "Good morning, Sa-chan. I have big breakfast ready for you." "Extra meat?" I asked hopefully. "Extra pork," Ka-chan promised. It was a little weird associating the word mother with a woman I didn't really know. I had maybe a quarter of Sakura's memories, and I was still relatively detached from them. Mother was distant, and viewed me more as a pet for her project, rather than an actual daughter. Not that I was complaining, of course. I had shelter, food, and she was a firm believer in buying people's affection, so I had an impressive collection of materialistic items. Father went AWOL from his center, and I hadn't seen him in over a decade. Sakura's Ka-chan, though, was very warm and prone to physical affection. So was her Tio-Yu-chan, and pretty much her entire family. They were prone to using their fists, too, when angered, but never out of malice. I sat down at the worn wooden table, and Ka-chan placed a bowl of steaming eggs, pork, cheese, and veggies in front of me. She then poured me a glass of fresh lemonade, because the woman was a dedicated gardener and nurtured 2 cherry blossom trees, and 3 lemon trees, before she sat down beside me, a happy smile on her face. Tell me more about your mission. In between wolfing down the delicious food and chugging the lemonade, I told her everything that happened on the mission. I left out the part where I failed to save the men with gangrene because that shit was depressing, and no one wanted to hear about depressing shit, unless they were in an angsty mood, which we certainly were not. She oh'd and awed and squealed happily at all the right parts. Since I had come home so late last night, she and Tio-Yu-chan didn't push for more than brief assurances that I was okay and everything went okay. How exciting, Ka-chan sighed. What a romantic life you lead. Are you happy, little flower? Of course I am, I told her. Are you? MN. I'm very happy for you. Let's not tell Tio-Yu-chan about Haku, though, any. That made me snigger. A companionable silence filled the homey kitchen while I continued to eat and Ka-chan pulled out her crochet supplies. When I was finished eating, she asked, would you like more? I'm full enough, I reassured her. After the debriefing, I'm going to try and train with Hina-chan today. Training ground 5, right? Right. She smiled brightly. Okay. Be sure to tell her, and your teammates, they're welcome to come over for lunch or dinner. I will, I promised. After a brief hesitation, I bent down and kissed her forehead. Bye-bye. Have fun, SA-chan. Team 7 gathered at the entrance to the Hokage's tower at exactly 600. Kakashi appeared in a whirl of leaves right on the dot, his favorite book nowhere in sight. With an excited giggle, I threw myself at my favorite sensei, using up my allotted physical contact of the day for a tight hug. When I began to nuzzle into him, Kakashi decided I had had my fun and began the process of prying me off him. I allowed him to do so, letting out a reluctant sigh. One day you will crave my hugs. Mark my words. I very much doubt that, Kakashi responded dubiously. Okay, team, let's head inside. Have you all finished writing your reports? I even drew pictures, Naruto exclaimed, holding out his crumpled papers. A quick glance from them made me whistle of appreciation. The prankster was a better artist than me. I'm sure Hokage-sama will be happy to look at your pictures, Kakashi responded, and I couldn't tell if he was being sarcastic, or sincerely believed that the Hokage's notorious soft spot for Naruto would cause him to enjoy the pictures. What are we doing after we give the report? Sasuke asked as Kakashi began to herd us inside. I purposely stopped short right before him in hopes he would bump into me, but the ex-umbu saw that coming and was prodding my back with the blunt end of a kunai. I pouted at him. Kakashi pushed the kunai further in, forcing me to keep up with his pace, and stay a good arm's length in front of him. I'm not sure. Protocol would dictate that any time a mission escalates a rank, the team is required to take a 3-day resting period, minimum. Given that none of us were seriously injured, and had time to rest up the following week, it may be possible the Hokage will waive the rule for us. If he does waive it, what will we do? I asked, smiling brightly. Can we train together more? I want to learn a ninjutsu. Genjutsu would be okay, too, I guess. And I want to learn Kenjutsu, and. We'll see, Kakashi interrupted. Sakura-chan. You know how to act in front of the Hokage, right? I morphed my face into an innocent expression. Whatever do you mean, Kakashi-sensei? I would treat Hokage-sama like all my superiors. You understand that I am technically your superior, right? Kakashi asked slowly. I purred. You can be whatever you wanna be, baby. Okay, Kakashi said loudly, Sakura-chan, no talking, please. Naruto sniggered at my betrayed look, while Sasuke turned his head to hide his smirk. We had reached the Hokage's office. I remained quiet as my teammates gave detailed reports of the mission. Naruto even turned to specific pictures in his report to show the Hokage. Hiruzen interrupted a few times to ask some pointed questions, and when it was first mentioned that Kakashi allowed us to carry on with an A-rank mission, Hiruzen gave a very pointed look towards the ex-Umbu captain. If I didn't know any better, I would have thought that the grandfather had even leaked some killing intent towards Kakashi, but that couldn't be the case, could it? And what is your take on the mission, Sakura-san? Hiruzen inquired. You have been largely silent. I felt my teammates stiffen around me, and I smiled widely. Pretty great. I got my harem started up. Amusement entered the Hokage's eyes, as I felt Sasuke-sai and Naruto try to cover his laughter. Did you now? Yes, I confirmed happily. I have every intention of being the next Mega Super Pervert, you know. You know, I trained the original Mega Super Pervert, Hiruzen told me, seeming to find my excitement humorous. Oh, I know, I assured him. Jiraiya-sama is amazing. I wish I could read his works, but apparently, I turned and shot a glare at Kakashi, I'm too young and someone won't buy them for me. The dilemma of age, Hiruzen uttered. Truly, what a shame. I'm surprised no one has told you, though, that those of Chunin rank and above are considered legal adults in Konoha's eyes, and as such you would legally be allowed to purchase those books once you become a Chunin. I gasped in the same moment Sasuke moaned, Naruto couldn't hide his laughter anymore, and Kakashi whispered despairingly, why would you tell her that? I am so going to become a Chunin, I declared, my next goal set before me. And then I shall have an Icha-Icha fest, and use all the pickup lines learned from it on Kakashi-sensei. Kakashi buried his face in his hands. Hiruzen chuckled. I'm quite glad to hear that, and I look forward to watching you succeed. Succeed in becoming a Chunin. That, too, Hiruzen agreed. I felt Kakashi twitch behind me and the veteran cleared his throat. Do you have any further questions for us, Hokage-sama? So will Kakashi be part of your har? Relevant, Kakashi pleaded. Any relevant questions, Hokage-sama, please. I leaned forward and whispered to Hiruzen, I think we're making the poor dear uncomfortable. It would appear so, Hiruzen murmured, sighing. I have no further, Hiruzen sniffed, relevant questions for your team. Take the standard 3 days off, collect your mission pay, and report back here for your next mission. We saluted. Dismissed, except for Kakashi. Naruto-kun, Sasuke-san, and Sakura-kun, have a pleasant day. The three of us shuffled out of the office, and it clicked shut behind us. Now what? Naruto asked. I'm going to wait for Kakashi-sensei, I decided. I have a few hours before I have to meet up with Hina-chan to train, anyway. I'm going to train, Sasuke said slowly. Then I guess. Hey, I interrupted, you two should train together. And learn, like, water walking. What? Naruto asked. Water walking. You know how Zabuza was able to stand on the water? And remember the tree exercise? Water walking is doing the tree exercise, except on water. It's the next level to chakra control. And you two seem to do better when you're competing with one another. So, I say you two should go down to our training grounds and go practice water walking. The two boys exchanged glances, both looking reluctant. I'll bring you guys homemade lunch before I train with Hina-chan, I bribed. Okay, Naruto decided, nodding his head. I guess I can work with the bastard long enough for lunch. Sasuke shrugged. I suppose ravioli is acceptable for lunch if I have to train with this idiot. Consider it done, I promised. The two boys looked at each other once more, before they began to head off. Not even a minute into their travel, and I could already hear them bicker. The familiar noise made me feel a bit nostalgic. I sat down on the rough carpet, leaning against the closed door. I shifted so my backpack was in my lap, and I opened it to pull out my next sewing project. A solid half an hour passed by in relative silence before the door opened behind me and I fell into the office and onto Kakashi's feet. Kakashi looked down at me, and I smiled up at him. Hello. Kakashi rubbed at the back of his head. Did you wait for me? Of course I did, I told him, surprised he seemed sincerely stunned. I love you. Why wouldn't I wait for you? The fact that I waited for him must have really thrown him for a loop, because Kakashi's visible eye widened marginally and he stiffened considerably. Alright then, make sure you, train, and we'll, meet up again after our, vacation is over. Bye. Then he was gone, and I heard Hiruzen's wheezing laughter from the office. Still laying on the floor, I raised my hands in a greeting to our Hokage and waved them around excitedly. Hi, Hokage-sama. Hello, Sakura-chan, Hiruzen chuckled. Hinata's eyes were wide with astonishment and a little bit of awe. That sounds so amazing, Sakura-chan. Our C rank wasn't anywhere near as daring. I beamed at my dear friend. It was definitely fun. How have you been, though? Done any more training? Hinata nodded her head hesitantly. I've been practicing releasing Tenketsu blocks like you said. I'm not very good. I smooshed her cheeks together so she couldn't finish what she was saying. You are a brilliant kunoichi. Say it with me. I am a brilliant kunoichi. I am a Bwiven kunoichi. With a smile, I released her. Good. Keep practicing until you can release the blocks without using your hands. Trust me. You're gonna need this skill for later. Okay, Hinata murmured agreeably. You Sakura-chan. Yes, dear. My Tio-sama are requested to meet with you. I cocked my head. Okay. When does he want to meet? He didn't specify. Okay, we'll end training a bit earlier today and then I'll go meet him, I decided. With that settled, let's get started. I wanna be hella strong for the upcoming exams. Hinata giggled while I began to flex my biceps. Look at these guns. Show me your guns, Hina-chan. Still giggling, she held out her arm for me to squeeze her biceps. She was already a fairly fit girl at the start of training, but under Iruka's advised regime there was a noticeable difference. She was leaner and more toned, not to mention her hands were thoroughly calloused, enough so that she didn't have to typically wear gauze after our sessions anymore. The difference for me at the start of training was astronomical. Sakura had been starving her body of necessary nutrients in her misguided attempts to look pretty, and she did not work out in the slightest outside of the required academy hours. The drastic change in routine did wonders for the growing body. I had proper fat and muscles now. I felt immensely proud of myself for the transformation. Hinata and I had reached a milestone in our physical development and it warranted a little self-praise and ego grooming. It also signified that we would be able to take our training to the next level. Tomorrow, I told her, still poking at her arms, it seemed she was a little ticklish and her giggles were so contagious and delightful, I couldn't resist. We shall pick out training weights since we're now properly strong enough that we won't damage our muscles by using them. I stopped tickling the princess long enough for to catch her breath. She was wheezing, curled up in the fetal position with a happy smile on her face. Oh okay. With energy that would put an Uzumaki to shame, I leapt up and clapped my hands together. Alright. Let's do some hardcore sparring now. Hinata rolled onto her back, a gleam in her eyes. I promise not to BL-block your tenketsus. I bowed, offering my hand out to her. I thank you for your kindness, milady. With mock grace she took my hand and stood back up, brushing off the dirt on her clothes and readjusting them. Oh, on the count of 3. I beamed. 1, 2, 3. We leapt at each other, determined smiles on our faces. Oh we, I whined as Hinata slowly stitched my left arm closed. Hinata's chakra control was superb enough that she could learn the Shosen and become an Irionin, but she chose not to because she honestly wanted to become an accomplished frontline fighter and focus on her clan techniques. I personally thought she would have made a rockin' Irionin, and we could have been the duo sexy doctor/nurse, which would have been awesome, but I wasn't going to pressure her into changing her mind. She got enough discouragement everywhere else, I would never add on to that. That being said, I did insist that she had some basic first aid training, including emergency sutures and amputations. During our spar we had both nicked the other plenty with our kunai. While I could heal up our injuries no problem with Shosen, I chose not to in order to give Hinata hands-on experience with stitching. I didn't want to numb the area either, so I could immediately tell her if she was doing something incorrectly, or if she accidentally punctured something that should have been left alone. Sorry, Hinata apologized. Don't be sorry, I told her. I'm just being a crabby patient. You really got me good. Sorry, Hinata apologized again. With one hand I smushed her cheeks together, causing her to pause in her work. Never apologize for being good at something, silly. I'm proud of you for what you did here today. I felt her face warm underneath my hand, and when I withdrew it I saw a pleasant flush on her cheeks. I smiled warmly at her, and she returned it with one of her own. Comfortable silence fell between us as she worked on stitching me up, then dressing my wounds. I had a fair amount of gauze covering my body at that point. My entire upper right arm, my entire left arm, my right calf, stomach, both feet, and hands, and even some wrapped around my head. My black training capri pants were torn at the edges, and I had a gash through my midsection, tearing open my red cami. Hinata was equally as battered and covered in gauze as I was. When we were both all doctored up, the sun had just started its descent over the horizon. I stood up, wincing at the sensation, and said, "All right, let's go meet with your Ryu-chan." Hinata looked up and down at me, an eyebrow raised. Either we meet him like this, or I go to him in a bathrobe first thing tomorrow morning. She covered her mouth in a useless attempt to hide her smile. Suppose then that it would be, best to meet with him now. I offered her my arm, and she took it daintily. Right you are, milady. Right you are. Gingerly, I took a seat across from Hayashi. I winced as I felt the stitches stretch across my arm and abdomen. Hayashi watched me with a focused gaze, his face a perfect mask of apathy. Hinata fidgeted beside me, her gaze steadily looking down. My eyes roamed across the pristine office, taking in how everything was meticulously organized, and if I didn't know any better, I would say that no one had used it for years. It looked detached, and entirely without life. Reminds me of home, I briefly thought. I'm thirsty. Hinata's back stiffened. I can go get. Please provide our guest with some refreshments, Hinata, Hayashi said softly. Hinata nodded jerkily before she left quickly. As soon as she left, I glared at Hayashi. You ought to be ashamed of yourself. Excuse me. Hayashi's eyes narrowed. What kind of father psychologically harasses and hurts his own daughter? I demanded. No wonder people think the Hyuga have stick up their asses and think they're the next fucking Uchiha. Their own clan head treats his own daughter like a piece of shit. Hayashi's cheeks flushed in anger and he hissed, "You have no." I leaned forward and put both my hands on his desk, entirely nonplussed. I don't care if you're socially awkward with children, or if your own father treated you like this. You're smart enough to know that your disinterest, disapproval, and all-around jackassery is debilitating to Hina-chan. Yet you still do it anyway. You have no right, Hayashi thundered, a vicious glower on his face. Killing intent poured from him, but it didn't even faze me. I have every right, I snarled back. I see firsthand the kind of damage you caused her. She's not some toy for you to toss aside because she doesn't meet your pathetic standards. Humans are not things that conform to ideals. Each human is different. You can't expect Hina-chan to learn and grow in the same kind of way you and your brother did, can you? No, you absolutely cannot. This whole village formed with the idea of providing children the ability to grow in a nurturing and safe environment. Yet you spit on that ideal every time you treat your own daughter like garbage because of some arbitrary and fucking stupid ideals that are hella outdated. If you keep up with your fucking child abuse, you're going to lose her. You're going to lose Hina-chan in a way that you will never get her back. So you better get your shit straight, and start acting like the proper Ryu-chan that she deserves, or you'll find yourself dealing with me again. And I promise your underwear will never feel safe again, I snarled. I will devote every waking moment of my life to making your life as miserable as you have made hers. I swear. Hayashi's body trembled with restrained anger, and the venom in his following words was impressive. Get out. Gladly, I snapped. I stood up, threw open the door, and found myself face to face none other than a gobsmacked Team 10, along with an extremely uncomfortable-looking guy. I nodded to them, then brushed past them and to a positively petrified Hinata. I smiled at her and blew her a kiss. Take care, dearie. I'll be by tomorrow to pick you up for training. BBBBB, Hinata squeaked. With a spring in my step, I left the Hyuga compound. I'm in the mood for some ice cream. Oh. Yes. I'm here to pick Hina-chan up for training, I chirped to the Hyuga guards. They both exchanged glances before one of them left. 3 minutes passed by for Hayashi appeared at the front gate, his gaze hard. Harano. Hina-chan's Tio-yu-chan, I greeted coolly. Hayashi eyed me for several moments before he tilted his head, beckoning me to follow him. Cautiously, I did so. He took me through the compound to a small, well-hidden garden in a courtyard. There were lemon trees, an abundance of flowers and rows of vegetables, each lovingly labeled. Hayashi took a seat on the porch, gesturing for me to sit beside him. Dubiously, I did so. Since you chose to speak so plainly last night, I will grant you the same favor. I am torn between demanding compensation for your lack of civility, and desiring to keep my original purpose of wanting to meet with you. Hayashi paused. I love my children. Do not ever claim otherwise. I resisted the urge to snort at that. However, Hayashi continued, a strained look briefly crossing over his face, I understand how someone on the outside would perceive it to be otherwise. Why? I asked. Why do you treat her like such if you actually love her? My late wife, Hisuna, made this garden, Hayashi said quietly. She passed away shortly after Hanabi was born. She was killed in action. She let her guard down, was tricked by the enemy. She was too gentle to be a kunoichi, and that kindness lead her to. So now you punish your daughter in hopes of, what? Hardening her. Hinata is too gentle to be a kunoichi. I do not want her to be a kunoichi at all. That's complete bullshit, I told him. Hinata's way stronger than you think her to be. She's kind, and despite putting up with you apparently passive-aggressively trying to destroy her dreams, she's still tried her hardest. She hasn't given up despite her own Tio-yu-chan treating her like garbage. She hasn't stopped loving you despite you being a complete jerk to her. That takes a special kind of strength to do that, a special kind of strength in order to forgive something like that. She's strong. Stronger than you and I could ever be. It would be best if she wasn't a kunoichi at all, Hayashi said softly. It would be best if she was loved by her Tio-yu-chan regardless of her choices, I retorted. You tell this stuff to her. Treat her like Hisuna would have treated her. She doesn't have a Ka-chan anymore, and right now she doesn't have a proper Tio-yu-chan. He glanced at me. What would a proper To-san do, then? Ask about her day, I said quietly. Attend one of our training sessions, and don't focus on her mistakes. Praise what she does right. I lifted up my shirt and presented him with my large gash. She did this to me. When she's not scared shitless, or feel like she's being poorly judged, she flourishes. She's damn good, Hayashi-san. Show her that you know she's good. Hayashi let out a long sigh. The reason I asked to meet with you in the first place is because of the change you brought to her. I never thought I would. Hayashi caught himself. What you did was inappropriate, and incredibly rude. If you have an issue with me, it should be dealt with privately, not in public. I was about to retort, when he raised his hand. That being said, I do understand why you lost your temper. You clearly care a great deal for my daughter, and you are at an emotional age that without proper training you cannot be expected to be in full control of your actions. All you saw was your friend being mistreated, and you acted on the knowledge that you had. Frowning, I decided not to tell him that I had planned for my outburst for quite some time in hopes of therapy no jutsu ng him. If I had kept it private, I felt like Hayashi would not have taken my concerns as seriously as having an audience. I also wanted to hurt him, at least a little bit, as much as he hurted Hinata. Frankly, I still planned on some kind of vengeance on her behalf, but not for a while. It would be too obvious that I had done it if I acted so soon after my outburst. I get that I hesitated, traumatized from the loss of your wife, but Hina-chan isn't Hisuna. She's your daughter, and she needs a Tio-yu-chan. Is it really so much to ask of you to be that for her? She's not going to give up on her dreams. You've clearly tried for years to convince her otherwise, you honestly think it'll change now? No, Hayashi admitted softly. After seeing the changes brought to her by encouragement, I have been forced to reconsider many things. That being said, in regards to your... I'll apologize if you come to our training session today, I told him. See for yourself what being positive can do for her. Hayashi's lips twitched. Very well. I paused. You should probably try to stay hidden at the start, though. If she knew you were watching, she'd probably get all nervous. That seems likely. I watched the shy Hinata smile at her father, and Hayashi awarded her with the faintest smile of his own. The two were headed home after our training session, both looking a lot happier than I had ever seen them. Hayashi was ready to beg for Neji's forgiveness around this point. He only needed a bit more of a push to change for the better for Hinata. And now that he'd seen her be strong, seen the potential inside of her, he'd never only see a weak little girl. At least, that was what I hoped. I had done my best to encourage the bright optimism and confidence I knew she had inside of her. I had done my best to fuel her dreams, and I had done my best to give her the strength she so desperately needed. Not only to prepare her for the horror that was the Chunin exams, or for the upcoming Akatsuki/war, but because I sincerely believed she would be happier that way. She would be happiest with not only Naruto's acknowledgement, but her own family's, too. I may not have been fond of Hayashi, but I understood her desire to be loved by her only living parent. And since that was what she wanted, I would do my best to provide it. Besides, who knows what kind of influence having a positive atmosphere at home and outside of home would do for her. I relished the feeling of blankets and warmth. The sun poured in through the window, and despite it being right in my eyes, I kept my blinds up and curtains pulled back. I simply did not want to get out of bed. Today I would go shopping with Hinata to pick out weights, and since Team 7 was still technically on leave, I had nowhere else to be aside from that. It was decided by myself that I would spend the day being utterly lazy and resting up. I am the blanket. The blanket is me. My stomach growled like the traitor it was. A moan escaped my lips. Then my bladder told me it was time to get up, too. Traitor. All of me. Get up, lazy ass. With another groan, I rolled out of my body and flopped to the floor, taking the blankets with me. Still bundled up, I made my way to the bathroom, and then down into the kitchen. Tio Yuchan looked up from his Sudoku, his eyes gleaming. Good morning, little flower. G morning, I mumbled. Ka-chan entered the kitchen and kissed my cheek. Good morning, love. Let me whip you up some breakfast. Please and thank you. I sat beside Tio Yuchan, stifling a yawn. Tio Yuchan patted the top of my head. Another busy day of training. Probably, I admitted. Tomorrow I'm supposed to meet up with my team so we can take our next mission. Tio Yuchan nodded at that, then his bright green eyes lit up. Oh, that reminds me. Your friend came by and wanted to give you this. I blinked as Tio Yuchan hurried out of the kitchen before returning with a medium-sized box and a feminine note on top. He set both in my lap, and I carefully opened the note before reading it. Sakura-chan. Tio Usama has decided to take an active role in my training once again. I know I have you to thank for that, and I cannot properly express my gratitude enough to convey how much it means to me. Thank you. I'm sorry, however, that it means that we will not be able to train together for a while. I know we were both excited to begin our weight training, and go shopping together, so I hope you don't mind that I took the liberty of purchasing our weights. Let's both become strong kunoichi. Sincerely yours. Hinata. I reread the overly formal note, wondering how embarrassed the cutie felt when writing that. The thought made my lips quirk upwards. I handed the note over to Ka-chan, as I could feel her trying to read it over my shoulder. She squealed happily when she finished reading it before handing it to Tio Yuchan. I am surrounded by adorable people, I thought, resisting the urge to pinch both their cheeks. My gaze swung over to the white box, and I lifted the lid. My mouth dropped open. The weights were seal weights. The single most expensive kind of weights one could buy. Standard weights were bulky and pretty obvious to the fact that they were weights. Seal weights were intricately embedded into a durable cloth-like material and transformed into things like small wristbands or akin. There were 4 articles inside the box, each of them a deep red with a little pink flower in the center, 2 wristbands, and 2 for my ankles. Beside the articles were instructions, and a 5-year warranty, which would not have been cheap given our line of work. With careful hands, I pulled each one out and examined it. Holy smokes! What cute little wristbands, Ka-chan exclaimed. They are cute, I agreed, not correcting her that they were more than simple wristbands. Ka-chan, would you mind packing me a lunch, and some snacks, too? I think I'll be a bit late out tonight. Okay, S.A.chan. I meandered through the streets of Konoha, my arms and legs aching something fierce. The sun had long since set, and the roads had thinned out as the night wore on. I took my time making my way home. Sometimes I was so amazed by everything I saw, and everything I felt. It was miraculous, a dream come true, really, to have woken up in the Naruto verse, right at the heart of everything. I never thought such a thing could happen, and I found myself wondering exactly how it happened. I would have considered it all to be part of one of my episodes, but my episodes never lasted this long, and they were a lot more wild than the relatively tame Naruto verse. At least, I didn't see any oozing walls, mountain of corpses, or sneering faces. Konoha was exactly as warm and bright as I imagined it to be. People were generally friendly, and children ran about the streets entirely unsupervised. It was a very trusting environment, and I felt envious of all the children who were born and raised from the start there. The smell of fried food caught my attention, and I decided to indulge a little from a food stand before heading home. As I nibbled on the deliciousness, my legs and arms cursing at me for not immediately returning home to take a hot bath, I couldn't help but think, I wish these kinds of days wouldn't end. It was a shame, really. But the clock kept ticking, and the exams and Akatsuki drew nearer, with the war right at their heels. As unavoidable as death. That thought made me smile wryly. As unavoidable as death, huh? Chapter 8, here's a picture of Kakashi's wedding. Good morning, my lovelies, I greeted Naruto and Sasuke. Kakashi had told our team last night to meet him on the Unmei, literally meaning fate, bridge that day. He said we would be taking a break from training, and moving on to something more exciting. Naruto grinned widely upon seeing me, rushing over and throwing his arms around my neck. I hugged him back, equally enthusiastic. I had successfully conditioned Naruto to crave my hugs, not that it was hard, the poor darling was already so starved for attention. Good morning, Sakura-chan. I patted his back as Naruto released me, hopping from one foot to the other in anticipation. Ka-chan actually made our lunches today. She wanted me to give you some dinner, too, Naru-chan. Naruto's eyes lit up like fireworks and he grabbed the 2 extremely large bento boxes from me. Sasuke gently, in comparison to Naruto, at least, took his own lunch with a quiet thank you. Naruto said, I promise I'll stop by this weekend to return the boxes. Much appreciated, I said. Sasuke, in turn, handed me his previous bento box. The team didn't always eat together. For the past couple of weeks Kakashi alternated between a full day's worth of training, or doing a few D-rank missions for half a day. On half days, sometimes the 3 of us stayed to train, which required much bribing on my part to convince Sasuke to stay, or go off on our own. I had hoped for a chance to train with Hinata again, but the 2 of us kept missing our chances. She sometimes stopped by my home while I was away to drop off little letters, to assure me she was okay and to encourage me not to steal her Ryo-Yu-chan's underwear, and small gifts, such as homemade bombs, but otherwise than that we hadn't had much interaction. Naruto and Sasuke had mastered water walking within about 3.5 days of practicing. On the days that we trained together, I encouraged them to spar with me while water walking. Both boys preferred sparring over any other kind of training, and sparring while water walking was one of the best ways to learn how to unconsciously use the technique, which was a vital skill. Kakashi appeared before us, his right arm lifting up as he accurately predicted my tackle hug. I glomped onto Kakashi, throwing enough weight into my takeoff, he stumbled back. I wrapped my legs and arms around him, burying my face in the crook of his neck. Kakashi shifted his posture, readjusting me slightly so he could see the 2 boys. Good morning my precious minions, Kakashi greeted us. Morning, sensei. Naruto exclaimed. I nuzzled. Good morning, my love. What are we doing today? Sasuke asked. Kakashi rubbed my back, quietly signaling for me to let him go. With much reluctance, I began to slowly release my hold. First I unhooked my legs, then after one last nuzzle, I stopped hugging him. Instead of burying my face in his neck, though, I moved on to keep it firmly pressed into his chest, with my arms tucked behind me, so he could still see my hands. There was a heartbeat of silence, as Kakashi seemed to be deciding what to do with me, before I felt him shrug. Then he said, I actually have a surprise for the three of you. I've enlisted you all in the Chunin exams. Yada! Naruto shouted, leaping up and down. You're the best, Kaka-sensei. Kakashi scratched at the back of his head with one hand, and with his other hand he presented us with 3 slips of papers. I lifted my head up long enough to grab one of the papers, before I went right on back to admiring the amazingness of Kakashi as up close and personal as I could. You don't have to enter if you don't want to, Kakashi said, ignoring the snorts from Sasuke and myself, but if you do choose to enter, be sure to go to that location on the form at 1400 tomorrow. The exams are difficult, more so than anything you guys have ever faced, so don't feel ashamed if. I'm getting my icha-icha, I whispered into his chest. You cannot throw yourself into a dangerous situation for the sake of good porn, Kakashi patiently told me. I wouldn't need to if you bought the collector's edition set for me. Oh, it's the collector's edition now. You have it. Therefore I must have it, too, I explained. How else can I use the pickup lines that apparently turn you on? Kakashi shook his head. I don't get turned on. Naruto and Sasuke snorted loudly at that, at which Kakashi glared at them. I read it for the story, really. If it's such a good story, why not let Sakura read it? Sasuke questioned, cocking his head and folding his arms over his chest, bento still in hand. It'll get her off your back long enough to read the stories. Kakashi stared at him. A few days' worth of peace is not worth a lifetime terror. I just wanna love you, I whined. Your definition of loving me is illegal right now. If loving someone with all their heart is illegal, then throw me in prison forever, I cried out. Kakashi patted my head, giving me his sexy eye smile. I would if I could. They all chuckled as I dropped to my knees from the sheer weight those cruel words forced upon me. While I tried to recover, Naruto asked Kakashi, is that all you wanted us for? Yep, Kakashi answered, making the pea pop. Kakashi-sensei. I asked sweetly, many ideas beginning to swarm inside my head. Yes, Sakura-chan. The Chunin exams, in between part 1 and part 2, are there breaks? Technically no, Kakashi said, cocking his head. The proctor may allow participants a breather, but legally speaking the exams are continuous between the first 2 parts. A Cheshire grin stretched across my face, as I realized my plan would indeed work. Naruto turned to me. Why do you ask? You'll see, I purred. I would really rather not, Kakashi said. And he was gone, and I was left crying on the inside at his lack of enthusiasm for my entirely epic plan. Sasuke shook his head, turning to face me. I was slowly getting up, my heart now recovered from the love of my life's utter disinterest and rejection. Sakura, were you able to be successful with those plants I gave you? A sheepish look crossed my face, and I cringed. The Uchiha compound had a massive garden that Sasuke hired Genin to take care of for him. I had a feeling that his father actually maintained the garden previously, from offhanded comments, which really surprised me, but it would explain why Sasuke didn't uproot any in favor of another training ground after the massacre. The garden did not have flowers, or vegetables, but housed a variety of hallucinogenic, poisonous, and dangerous plants. Apparently Sasuke's mother enjoyed coating her weapons in various poisons, and Sasuke's father started the garden in order to grow special poisons to woo her. What a romantic. Uchiha romance aside, the poisonous garden was something I was greatly interested in. It was difficult to find a fighting style to supplement my Iryo training. As much as I wanted to be an in-your-face frontline fighter, as an Iryonin, I had to be cautious. In all of Tsunade's books, she could not stress the importance of the Iryonin staying alive and capable of healing his/her comrades. Besides, Team 7 already had 2 dedicated fighters who were powerhouses. For the sake of team dynamics and being smart, I chose not to be a frontline fighter, but to embrace my support role like the team player I was. That being said, there were not a lot of offensive techniques I could add to my arsenal. I wanted to learn Genjutsu, but I needed an active volunteer to practice the skill on something of which both boys were not up for no matter the bribery offered. Without the ability to practice Genjutsu consistently, that was temporarily thrown out. Next thought was ninjutsu, but Kakashi flat out rejected that idea because my chakra capacity was too low, which was steadily being rectified. Then Naruto threw out the offhand suggestion about poisons. And it was like match made in heaven. Poisons were versatile and were the perfect fit for any aspiring Irionin. They were not easily learned, though. The only textbook on creating poisons available to someone of the genin rank held no dangerous/easily useful recipes. The most extreme poison in it was a hallucinogenic that made people intensely intoxicated for a few minutes at most before wearing off. Upon being entered into the bloodstream, it acted instantaneously, but since it wore off so quickly it wasn't something to be relied upon. The book mostly contained various sedatives, and was more focused on identifying poisons and creating antidotes. I was not deterred, though, and I was determined to acquire the skill. Even if the poisons in it were not practical in an obvious sense, learning how to make poisons would be vital if I ever wanted to create my own special brew. So, I needed the equipment and materials to practice making the recipes. Sasuke obliged, providing the plants in exchange for food, rights to order me to be silent for an entire mission, which I forced him to already use all of his chances on our D-ranks the past week. Naruto actually had a good chunk of the equipment, for his elaborate pranks, apparently, and the rest Kacchan bought for me. I hedged. Technically yes. I was able to make one batch of the hallucinogenic, and 2 sedatives. Sasuke stared at me, a slow insufferable smirk crawling across his face. Out of how many tries? I fidgeted. 39. He chuckled at my obvious embarrassment, while Naruto consoled me. They must have been really hard. It's chemistry, I mumbled. And it's not like the recipe gives me step-by-step instructions. I had to do a lot of trial and error and then after the first explosion Kacchan made me work outside and the wind kept messing me up. I'm sure, Sasuke condescendingly responded. I stuck out my tongue at him. Sasuke scoffed at me. I'm heading out. I'll see you all tomorrow for the exams. Naruto nodded his head enthusiastically. Oh, yeah. I gotta get ready. See you guys tomorrow. Bye, I mumbled as the duo rushed off in opposite directions. Weren't we supposed to meet Gaara today? Oh, yeah. Wait. How come we didn't? How did I change that? For some reason the thought made me uneasy. I wasn't trying to actively change that encounter, yet that's what I ended up doing without even trying. The differences that should have happened were Haku and Zabuza living, and Hinata and I becoming badasses way sooner than our canon counterparts. How did those things factor into preventing Naruto and Sasuke from meeting Gaara? Well, maybe we can still find him. This should be the day they come into Konoha, right? How are we supposed to find him? We're chakra sensitive, right? That's prepubescent of being chakra sensors. Surely we can try to sense Shukaku's Jinchuriki. So we just walk around the village trying to see if we can sense a big ball of malicious chakra. Got any better plans? Nope. I must have wandered around Konoha for an hour before I got an odd tingly sensation in the back of my mind. It reminded me of a swarm of buzzing bees, or a sandstorm, that kind of constant buzzing/grinding noise. The odd sensation perked my interest enough that I began to feel for it. Sensing through chakra was weird. I felt like I was trying to find a dying flashlight on a hot summer day, only able to find it by feeling for its warmth because all my other senses were non-existent. Weird. With a capital W. It was doable, but it made me feel awkward. I continued to head north in Konoha until the buzzing/grinding sensation was overwhelming. My eyes roamed around, widening once I saw the source of the sensation. There they were. For a moment, I was stupefied because I couldn't believe I actually found Gaara and his siblings through sensing them with my chakra. That moment did not last long, however, because I realized that Temeri was arguing quietly with Kankuro, gesturing towards a map. Seeing my chance, I hurried over to them. "Hi. Welcome to Konoha. You guys look lost, need any help?" I offered, my words coming out in a breathless rush. "I'm always happy to help cuties." Temeri flashed me a brilliant smile. "Do you know where the Sunbeam Hotel is?" I nodded. "Yeah, it's on the opposite side of the village." That made Temeri shoot Kankuro a dirty look, at which the puppeteer shrugged. "I'd be glad to take you all there. I'm Harino Sakura." Temeri offered, "And these are my brothers, Gaara and Kankuro." I took her hands in my own, bowing down and kissing the back of them. "It is a great pleasure to meet such a beautiful kunoichi like yourself." She yanked her hands back, eyeing me oddly. "Right. Lead the way, Harino." "Just Sakura," I told her, turning my back towards them and beginning to make my way through the streets. Many of the villagers unconsciously gave a wide berth to the Jinchuriki. I wasn't worried, though, because Shikaka was pretty fun person. A bit sadistic, cynical, and twisted, but fun. He was the perfect cross between a tsundere and a yandere. If he was an option in an otome or visual novel, I'd hop all over that fun route. Along the way, I purchased a wicker basket filled with flowers and began to idly twist them into crowns. I pointed out the sights to each of them, giving them an impromptu tour. By the time we reached the hotel, I had finished 5 flower crowns. "Here we are," I said with a flourish, bowing to the trio outside the hotel. Temeri smirked at me. "Thanks for the tour, Guide-chan." I giggled at her. "You're most welcome, pretty lady. I have one more thing for you all." Facing Gaara first, I took out the first crown and gently placed it atop his head. His pale gaze met my own, and I could feel the tension from all 3 of them from my actions. Because I did not hold any ill intent towards Gaara, and he clearly did not view me as a threat, Shikaku/Karura's sand defense did not trigger. Nonplussed from the intense stare Gaara gave me, I placed crowns on Temeri and Kankuro. "I hope you all have a lovely stay here," I said, not even flinching when I felt Gaara's killing intent focus in on me. Temeri and Kankuro winced at it, unconsciously stepping away from me. "You are not scared," Gaara stated. Frowning, I turned back to face him. "What kind of future best friend would I be if I was scared of you? Besides, Shikaku is a cutie, too. I love you, Shikaku. Kurama loves you, too, even if he's a narcissistic asshole. He's just a tsundere, you see." The perplexed look on Gaara's face was positively priceless. Silence fell between all of us before Gaara broke it by saying, "Okasan says you're lying." I placed both hands on my hips. "Shikaku, what would Hagoromo say if he knew you were calling your future self-appointed mother a liar?" "Okasan wants you to be quiet." "That's what I thought," I retorted. "Anyway, I have to head out. It was lovely meeting you all. And to reiterate, Kurama is a tsundere." Gaara tilted his head. "You're making Okasan laugh. Tell Okasan that I call him Kurama of the Fluff, too." To his face. "And I plan on spanking him at some point in the future." Gaara nodded slowly, the killing intent dying off from focusing on me. "Okasan likes you." I winked. The first step into winning someone over to coerce them into a harem is to receive the parents' blessing. Not a necessary step, but it makes it easier. "What?" Temeri whispered, entirely bewildered. "Gaara will inevitably join my harem," I explained to them. "There is no stopping that. Shikaku-sama will join eventually, as well." "What?" Kankuro echoed. Oh, look at that time, I gotta go. Peace on earth and all that, bye-bye." "The Chunin exams." Ka-chan repeated, her pretty green eyes lighting up. "How wonderful, S.A.-chan." I beamed at my completely awesome Ka-chan, pausing in devouring my absolutely delicious meal that night in order to do so. Tio-yu-chan reached over and ruffled my hair affectionately. "That's our girl, though." The gesture made me remember another one of Sakura's memories, and I felt a surge of affection from that memory towards Ka-chan and Tio-yu-chan. I had almost all of her childhood memories of Tio-yu-chan and Ka-chan by that point, along with some strong attachment to said people. I sincerely wished I had these parents instead of my first set, but c'est la vie. It might seem a little odd to adopt brand new parents, especially in the way that I had done so, taking over their daughter's body, but at times it genuinely felt like I was Sakura and they were my parents. It was difficult to fight the sensation, and for brief flashes I could even forget about my first life and wholly embrace the current one. I lapped up their praise for that night, enjoying the utter love and warmth they held for me. It was a non-existent thing in my first life, so I figured I should cherish all I could get in my second life. When dinner was over, I headed up to my room and prepared for my epic plan to conquer the Chunin exams. The next morning, I took my time to double-check that I had everything prepared. I ran through my checklist several times, and only when I was satisfied, did I leave to meet with the team. Naruto and Sasuke were waiting for me a little ways from the academy. "Good morning." "Good morning," Naruto cheerfully greeted. I placed small snacks in each of their hands. "Ka-chan says that we should make sure that we have plenty of energy for the exams." Naruto gleefully began to nibble on his onigiri, while Sasuke ate his at a slower pace. I shifted the weight of my backpack, hands-free, as I had already eaten mine on the way there. "What's in your backpack?" Naruto asked, noticing how bulgy it was. "Duplicates," was my only response. "Duplicates of?" "You're a cutie," I told him, patting his cheek before turning and heading inside the academy. I felt both of them follow behind me, taking note that Sasuke's chakra reminded me of carpet chalk, and Naruto's felt like a bonfire. Kakashi's chakra reminded me of the flower asphodel. Did I mention how chakra sensing was weird? Because it was. It was really, really weird. We headed up the stairs, and upon rounding the corner we found an abundance of genin standing outside a room. "Please, just let us through," Tenten pleaded with the fake genin who were actually chunin guarding the door. I called out, "I wouldn't bother, people from Guy's team. That's not the right room, it's under a genjutsu." All eyes snapped towards me, and I smiled happily. Tenten, Lee, and Neji recognized me almost instantly, because Lee gasped. "You're the brave maiden who defended your friend against Hyuga-sama." "Yes," I said, ignoring the dubious looks Sasuke and Naruto gave me. "Yes, I am. Seriously, though, you guys shouldn't be bothering with that. I thought Kakashi-sensei's rivals team would be smarter than that." Lee cringed, while Tenten looked sheepish and Neji turned his back on us, already walking away. "Come on, my team," I said, looking over my shoulder to Sasuke and Naruto, "the real room should be upstairs." "How do you know that?" Naruto loudly whispered to me. "I'm chakra sensitive," I answered. "And I can count." Naruto nodded sagely at my response, and the three of us continued on our merry little way. "Wait," Lee called out as the three of us entered another room. We stopped as one, each turning back to face Team 9. "Your name, fair maiden?" "Haruno Sakura," I said, doing a little curtsy. "My teammates are Uzumaki Naruto," I gestured towards Naruto who did a jovial wave, "and Uchiha Sasuke, otherwise known as Duck Ass." Sasuke shot me a venomous look. "Go to hell, you perverted woman." "I'll save you a seat, dearie," I responded back cheerfully. "You guys are guys kiddos, right?" "Yeah," Tenten said hesitantly. We didn't mean to listen in on your conversation with Hyuga-sama." "It's quite alright," I reassured her. He needed some sense knocked into him, and being the sensible person, Sasuke and Naruto snorted at that. I took it upon myself to do so." "It was very brave, Sakura-san," Lee exclaimed. "I admire your courage, and your beauty. Please, go out with me." Sasuke was aghast. "Are you insane?" I smiled at Lee. "I've decided to wait until I'm of age to date anyone, but you can join my harem." Tenten paused. "You're not dating, but you have a harem." "Yes." Lee was heartbroken. "Oh. If it makes you feel any better," Naruto hesitantly began, "she only has 2 people in her harem so far." 3, I corrected Naruto. "Hina-chan joined a couple weeks ago." Naruto nodded. "Okay, 3. Then he paused. "How come I'm not in the harem?" "You are welcome to join my harem, sweetie," I told him, patting his shoulder. "I view you too much as a son, though, to do anything. You'd be like the designated cuddle buddy in the harem. Naruto perked up. I love cuddles. Count me in. This is irritating. Let's go, Tenten, Neji muttered, giving me a contemptuous glare. But, Lee began, torn, I do not wish to. Tenten grabbed Lee's hand, come on, Lee. You can talk to Sakura-san after the exams. I waved goodbye as Team 9 left ahead of us, quite happy with the impression I had left up upon them. I had faith that Naruto would still get his chance to therapy no Jutsu Neji, but if by some odd chance that didn't happen, I was fully prepared to lock Hayashi and Neji in the same room together until they were bestest of buddies. Or blackmail them. Either way worked for me. Sasuke watched them leave for a moment before shaking his head. I can already tell these exams are going to be a hassle. I reached over and patted his shoulder, ignoring how he instinctively flinched from my touch. As I conditioned Kakashi, I would condition Sasuke, too. Not as demanding as Kakashi for a multitude of reasons, but I was determined for Sasuke to get used to hugs, and physical contact in general. The lack of affection in his life after the massacre definitely played a huge role in his antisocial, and borderline sociopathic tendencies. Not that I had room to judge sociopaths, or anything, but I figured he would be happier all around if he had love and affection in his life on a regular basis. We moved at a lazy pace, entirely at ease and feeling confident for the exams. When we reached the last bit of stairs before the room with the exams, Kakashi appeared before us. Kaka-sensei, I cried out happily, throwing myself into his arms. He shifted his stance slightly to prepare himself for my hug tackle. For a brief moment I could have sworn he hugged me back, but the sensation lasted no more than a second, so I couldn't be sure. Far too soon for my liking, Kakashi began the process of removing me from him. I'm glad you are all here, Kakashi said, giving us the sexy eye smile. I'm proud of each of you, and I wouldn't have recommended you three to take these exams if I wasn't confident you would ace them. My heart soared at his praise. Praise whore. My hands reached out on their own towards him and Kakashi deftly grabbed them and put them both in one of his hands. With his other hand he reached over and patted each of us on our head. I pouted at him, my bottom lip sticking out. You always end our hugs so quickly. You can hug me, Sakura-chan, Naruto happily offered. I beamed at him, turning partially towards him, as Kakashi still had a firm grip on my hands, and I took the time to wonder if his hands were simply that big, or if my hands were that small. As the designated cuddle buddy, I'm always ready to give out hugs. A mischievous smile crawled its way across my face. Okay. Hey, when you see Hina-chan next, would you mind hugging her for me? I know she needs some hugs, too. Naruto nodded. Yeah, sure thing. You're going to give her a heart attack, Sasuke deadpanned. My eyebrows rose. You know about her? It was painfully hard not notice a girl who literally fainted in class any time Naruto was near her, Sasuke snarked. So sassy, I said with a coy smile. Do you need a hug, too, little boy? Are you jealous? Touch me and die, Sasuke crankily informed me. Oh, he so needs a hug. With a woeful sigh, I returned my attention to Kakashi, giving him the most pleading look I could muster. He let out a long sigh, and released his hold on me, lifting up one arm. With a delightful squeal I hugged him again, savoring how he patted my back gently. Deciding not to push him for his wondrous gift, I then turned around and latched onto Naruto to satisfy my intense desire to hug people. Naruto squeezed me tightly, being the all-around ball of sunshine and love he was. The two of us are going to fill this world with so much love no one will ever be angsty again. As long as a member of the Uchiha are still alive, that's not going to happen. SHH. Yes it will. Everyone knows the greatest power of all is love and friendship. No. That would be a neutron star about to go out in style. Deidara would probably give his life for a chance to see that. Kakashi continued to eye-smile at us. Well. I'll be watching, minions. Try not to embarrass me. Sasuke and Naruto pointedly looked towards me, and I whistled innocently. Try not to sexually harass the other genin, Kakashi told me. I don't know, man, I confessed. The goggle gods told me to go on a hugging spree before the second task. Of course they did, Sasuke sardonically said. Why wouldn't they do anything but enable your delusional fantasies? My fantasies will not remain delusional for much longer, I vowed. My harem will come to life, and as soon as I hit what passes for adulthood in this world, I will indulge in every fantasy my body can handle with said harem. You are a depraved person, Sasuke informed me. I didn't say they would be sexual fantasies, I pointed out. For all you know, I was referring to a 72-hour Uno marathon, or who can keep backflipping the longest before getting sick. You're the one that jumped to things of that nature. He flushed. You said adulthood. My legs would have finished growing by the time I reach adulthood, therefore I have a greater chance of winning the backflipping contest, I explained. Geez, get your mind out of the gutter. Yeah, Sasuke, don't be such a perverted bastard, Naruto agreed with me, grinning wickedly. Before the Uchiha could begin throttling either of us, Kakashi cleared his throat. Glad to see your team dynamics are strong as ever. Don't maim each other before the third part, bye. And he was gone. I missed him already. Naruto clapped his right fist into his left open palm. All right. Let's kick some ass and take some names. May the goggle gods watch over this, I solemnly prayed. It seemed like Sasuke was repressing the urge to sigh at us, because his face screwed up and his shoulders twitched, before decided to open the door for us. The three of us stepped inside the exam room, and immediately I was wrapped into a tight hug. I let out a happy giggle as I hugged Hinata back, pulling back long enough to nuzzle my nose against hers. She giggled as I did so, a light blush covering her face. Sakura-chan, I have missed you. And I have missed you, my princess, I informed her, looking her up and down. Her jacket was nowhere to be found. Instead, the heiress wore a lilac t-shirt with a little pale blue flower over her left breast. Her arms were bare, displaying her well-earned muscles. I noticed that she wore matching wristbands as me, except while mine were pink, hers were a pale blue with a lilac sakura flower in the center, with matching shinobi gloves. She kept her standard pants and shoes. However, I noticed that she also chose to grow her hair out a bit more. You look positively adorable, I told her, eliciting another blush from the girl. She's not the only one looking adorable today, Ino interjected, wrapping an arm around my waist. Hinata and I both welcomed the blonde spitfire into our hug, causing Ino to blush and smile happily, which made Hinata and I giggle. We are all adorable today, I declared, relishing the group hug and the feeling of warmth in our little circle. Naruto gave a whine. Hey now. As the designated cuddle buddy of the harem, why am I not included? Ino and I rolled our eyes, but lifted our arms to allow Naruto to join. Hinata let out a quiet gasp when the hero tackled into us, laughing happily to be a part of the group hug. Poor Hinata was struggling not to faint. Her face was redder than Madara's armor, and she was borderline hyperventilating. Thankfully for her, Kiba's next crude comment triggered Ino and Naruto and to round on him and focus their embarrassment/annoyance on him. Hinata seized the moment, and promptly hid behind me, burying her face in her hands. I patted her back consolingly, watching as Kiba and Naruto escalated their pissing contest. Our little group continued to watch our most boisterous members bicker until I noticed a certain someone heading our way. Kabuto approached, a smile on his face, and before he opened his mouth, I threw my shoe at him. Get out of here, you piece of shit. Don't even open your mouth. Leave before the next thing I do is take a spoon, gouge out your eyes, and spoon feed them to you. Then choke you with said spoon. My previous classmates gaped at me, while I glared hatefully at the lying liar who lies. Kabuto looked positively shell-shocked. You Sakura-chan? Hinata inquired hesitantly, entirely bewildered. I did not give her my attention, yet, entirely focused on channeling every bit of my desire to kill the POS that was in front of me. Kabuto took a step back, playing the perfect role of being intimidated. I guess I'll leave. Only once the threat was gone, I relaxed and beamed at all my friends. Don't worry about it, guys. But that guy is the worst kind of scum you will ever meet. I will definitely do some not nice things to him one day. Sasuke's eyes lit up with understanding. Wait. Is that? Naruto looked between us for a moment, before he, too, realized what Sasuke was asking. Sakura-chan. Was that? Yes, I confirmed. His name is Kabuto, and what he has done is unforgivable. That guy? Kiba asked, incredulous. What did he do? Ino's brow furrowed. I can't say, yet, I answered. But you guys will know within the month. And you all may very well come to hate him in the coming years. Shikamaru spoke up for the first time since we entered the room. If he's that bad, why is he still a Konoha genin? I can't tell you that. The Goggle Gods warned me about telling anyone about the things he has done, without solid proof. It's very dangerous. The Shikamaru began, but Naruto gave him a look, and the Nara air fell quiet. Then there was a big puff of smoke, and Ibiki appeared in all his badassery. All too happily, I pushed out the yucky thoughts of Kabuto, focused entirely on enacting the next part of my epic plan. As soon as I got my test, I flipped it over and began to draw a detailed image of Kakashi and me getting married, with the Akatsuki, replacing the clouds with flowers, and they each wore masks. All around us, Hidan was the officiant, and Hinata acting as my maid of honor. I drew Tobi as Kakashi's best man, with Naruto and Sasuke as groomsmen along with Guy. The pack of cuties were also dressed as groomsmen with cute little bows, and Pakun acting as the ring bearer. All the Konoha ladies with Temari and Konan were dolled up, acting as my bridesmaids. It was an outdoor wedding, with lots of trees, clouds, and typical wedding stuff. I finished the picture, and shaded it, halfway through the test, and then I flipped it over and began to draw each Akatsuki duo in each box. Starting at the top left was Konan and Nagato enjoying some tea, with the ghost of Yahiko blowing kisses to Konan. Top right was Itachi and Kisame, Itachi knitting while Kisame ate some sushi. Below them was the zombie duo, Kakuzu holding Hidan's head and smirking, while Hidan was throwing out curses. Beside them was Deidara and Sasori competing over if art was everlasting or brief. Below them was Tobi being a cutie with Mia. To the box next to Tobi was Obito and now proudly holding up goggles to the Goggle Gods. Then below them was Emiwao, Naruto, and Kurama posing for a photo. Finally beside Emiwao, Naruto, and Kurama, was Madara eating cakes with Hashirama. In the box that was meant for the 10th question, I wrote, "The Goggle Gods blessed me with the knowledge that your test is bullshit. Praise be to the Goggle Gods, you heathen." I decided to finally pay attention to my teammates, noticing the Sasuke had completed his test, and Naruto was giving Hinata a look of sheer awe. That made me a bit curious. Upon further inspection, it seemed that Hinata had literally swapped their test sheets after finishing her own. She was nearly done with Naruto's. The sheer size of the balls she had grown over the past month left me breathless. Love and encouragement did wonders. I never understood why people don't live by that. If everyone cared, so many problems would be fixed. If everyone loved, nothing else would get done. We'd all become lazy, having no reason to aspire for more. That is so not true. Get your cynicism out of my optimism. Get your optimism a check-up with reality. It really needs it. I promptly began to ignore my Debbie Downer inner. The first part ended without any big scene, or fuss. Anko arrived, as sexy in person as she was in the anime, and instructed us to follow her. I was in the lead following her, admiring her shapely form. The other genin seemed content in giving her birth. Your butt is the second best butt I have ever had the pleasure of seeing. That made the poison mistress stop, irritated. Second best. Kakashi-sensei has the best butt, I explained to her. She paused in her walking, then shook her head. Even if it's him, my ass should be way better. I mean, like, don't get me wrong, I said to her, ignoring how Naruto was tugging on my sleeve and gesturing wildly for me to be quiet. Almost the entire group of genin that was following behind Anko was listening to our conversation. Your butt is very attractive, and you have this whole sexy vibe going for you. Easily the sexist kunoichi I have personally seen, but Kakashi-sensei's butt is as like as like. Words failed me and I gestured with my hands. Anko peered at me. I get where you're coming from, but I personally don't see it. I gasped. How could you not? Have you seen his butt? Yes, Anko answered. Every kunoichi has, and a good chunk of shinobi I bet. There were some scandalized gasps and chokes from the participating genin. Anko lightly patted her bum. But he has nothing on his. I'm as smooth as a baby's ass. I have it on good authority that he is, too, I exclaimed. That got another pause, and a leer from Anko. Really? Really, I confidently told her. How do you know? Who told you? I hesitated, thinking that perhaps Kakashi wouldn't want me to inform Anko that I had managed to grab his booty on more than one occasion. I'm not allowed to say. Anko bent over and squinted at me. She stared at me for several seconds, before her eyes lit up and she chortled. Ha! Looks like we have ourselves another Jiraiya-sama. I gasped. You know. I can't believe you got the drop on Hatake, Anko commented, placing a hand on my shoulder and making me walk with her as she guided the rest of the genin once more. So is it really that good? It's why I say it's the best. You're biased. You obviously have the hots for your teacher. Not able to deny that with a straight face, I merely smiled in response. That seemed to amuse the sexy lady even more so, because she snickered, patting me on the back. Tell you what. You pass this part, and I'll let you buy me dango. I bowed before her. It would be my honor, oh sweet spirit of sheer sexiness. If I didn't know any better, I could have sworn I heard groans of disgust from behind me. Clearly, must have been my imagination. The rest of the trip to the forest went by pretty quick, with Anko and I shamelessly flirting back and forth. When we had arrived, she gave her dramatic speech about the rules, and blah, blah, blah. Then the waivers were handed out. It was time for the next step in my epic plan trademark. Hug time. I shouted out after signing my waiver. I handed it over to Naruto before throwing my arms around him. Since we have another 30 minutes, I'm going to hug everyone. Naruto patted my back. Everyone. I pulled away from him, already running towards a complete stranger from Kumogakure who had a nice butt. Everyone. I returned to my team a few minutes before we had to enter the forest. Each group was assigned a different area and an assistant lead us to different gates. When it was time for the second part to begin, the door to the Forest of Death unlocked, and the assistant stepped back with a cocky smirk. We stepped inside the Forest of Death. Sasuke looked over at us. We need a plan. I pulled off my backpack and dropped it on the ground. I got this, guys. They both turned to look at my backpack, and when I unzipped it, I presented it to be filled with Earth and Heaven scrolls. They stared at it. What? Sasuke deadpanned. Kakashi-sensei said the exams didn't end between Part 1 and Part 2, I began to explain, so technically as soon as we knew the parameters of Part 2, we could act. Anko-sama did not specify that we had to take the scrolls while inside the forest. She only stated that we had to present one Heaven and one Earth scroll at the tower by the end of 5 days. Naruto was bewildered. So how did you get all those scrolls, Sakura-chan? Remember how I went on my hugging spree earlier? I asked. Well, while I was hugging people, I pricked them with my hallucinogenic poison, the one that makes them super drunk, and then I nicked their scrolls while they were feeling hazy. Sasuke's brow furrowed. When the poison wore off, though, wouldn't they realize they had a missing scroll? I left a duplicate in its place. How did you know to make duplicates? The goggle gods, I answered, zipping my backpack up and slinging it back over my shoulders. Anyway, that's the abridged version. We have our scrolls, so let's head to the tower, yeah. Naruto grinned brightly at me. That's so amazing, Sakura-chan. You're always so prepared. Yes, I drawled out slowly. Obviously there was a bit more to the story. I didn't go anywhere near teams I knew were dangerous, or I felt had chakra levels higher than regular genin. Several of the teams participating were overly arrogant and lowered their guards around me, which was another criteria for me to target them, misbelieving I was only a little girl. Joke's on them, though. I'm a crazy woman, I keep everyone on their toes. That you do. Sasuke shifted, still giving me a disbelieving look. Okay. Let's head to the center tower, then. I saluted. Brilliant plan, good sir. Last one there has to be everyone else's sex slave. Naruto let out a scandalized gasp, while Sasuke grimaced. No. Party pooper, I pouted, already taking off into the trees. It would be pretty swell if our team managed to beat the others to the tower. We could break a whole new record, you know? I bet Kakashi would feel super proud of us and praise me bunches if we did that. That thought made my heart skip a happy beat. My feet landed with soft thuds as I leapt from branch to branch, Naruto and Sasuke flanking me. Sasuke's eyes had shifted into a Sharingan, and he seemed to be constantly scanning our surroundings. Naruto had an inordinately happy smile on his face, looking like the most pleased pickle in existence. I felt the urge to ruffle his hair every time I looked over and saw that smile. We moved quickly, not pausing when we heard the first screams echo throughout the forest. Naruto and Sasuke, never ones to turn down a competition, did their best to race to the tower. Even without the penalty to the loser, all of us were motivated to be the first team to reach the tower. If everything had gone according to plan, we would never even have to see Orochimaru. Unfortunately, things did not go according to plan. But, hey, that's what backup plans were for. So when that big gust came out of nowhere and blew us all away, in the same direction, though, because we were tightly packed together in our race, I wasn't too surprised. And when Orochimaru walked towards us, disguise firmly in place, with a smile on his face, I knew it was time for the backup epic plan trademark. The killing intent flooded the area, freezing my teammates for a brief moment, and stunning me for a split second before excitement and adrenaline overrode me. The widest smile possible stretched across my cheeks in anticipation for one of the best damn villains in written history, in my totally biased opinion, approached us. The Goggle Gods warned me of your impending arrival, I told Orochimaru, as I pulled out a small scroll from my backpack. The creepy, in a cool way, Snake Man chortled. Did they now? Do you know who I am, then? I nodded my head. Of course, Orochimaru-sama. I have your complete collection of anatomy guides in my room. I would have brought them to get your autograph, but I was worried they would get damaged in the forest. Orochimaru laughed once more, his killing intent idly dying off. Sasuke and Naruto slowly moved to flank either side of me, both eyeing Orochimaru cautiously. I wouldn't have thought one of Konoha's little seedlings would be allowed to want my autograph. They just don't understand you, I reassured him. I can't say I entirely do, too, but I can definitely say that I understand enough not to hate you and that I can appreciate what you have done. Without yours and Tsunade-sama's experiments, Konoha wouldn't be so advanced in medical care as it is now. But, of course, Orochimaru agreed with me. What on earth is a rational child like yourself still doing in this village? Rational? Sasuke repeated, incredulous. I'm in love with Kakashi-sensei, I explained. I couldn't bear to just leave him. Otherwise I would have gone rogue and hunted down Kisame-sama and begged his blessing to hang out with him. Hoshigaki-san is an interesting fellow, Orochimaru commented pleasantly, as if remarking on the weather. I certainly think so, I sighed happily, thinking about my idol. Returning to the point on hand, I unsealed the scroll. I don't want to die, and I don't think my teammates want to die either. Orochimaru said, most don't. Then 15 flares shot up and out of the scroll and into the sky, illuminating our entire vision in bright red and purple. Flares were used to signal for immediate help, and all Genin teams were required to carry red flares on every mission. Purple flares were one of 5 distinctive flares to alert everyone in the vicinity to the level of danger. Green for B rank, yellow for A rank, pink for S, purple for SS, or cage level, and white was used for when a team was significantly outnumbered. I wasn't sure if Anko and the Umbu were already searching for Orochimaru, but Orochimaru didn't know if they were looking for him yet, either. So now the incredibly dangerous missing Nin was left with a bit of a dilemma. He clearly didn't want to confront an entire squad of Umbu, which he did not know if they were coming or not, but being the cautious genius he was, he would assume they were, but he very much wanted to give Sasuke a curse mark. Orochimaru frowned. That's no fun. I don't want to die, yet, I told him. I am sorry. If I knew for sure you wouldn't kill us, I wouldn't have shot up the flares. I suppose I can't fault you for that, Orochimaru allowed, causing me to beam at him, but really. You cut my time significantly. Next time we meet up, I'll buy you lunch as an apology, I offered. Orochimaru tilted his head at that, and then he was a blur in the next moment. I didn't feel any killing intent coming from him, so it greatly surprised me when the next instant I saw him. He was digging his knee up into my diaphragm and sending me hurtling through the trees before I landed with a very dizzying thud. Pain shot throughout my entire backside, and I knew that he had successfully broken several bones with one kick. Blood pooled into my mouth, as I struggled to stay awake. Each breath burned, and I could not take in enough oxygen to breathe properly. He had induced traumatic pneumothorax when the ribs broke inwards and punctured my left lung. As the edges of my vision blackened, I knew I had to work quickly before I suffocated, or passed out. Thankfully, adrenaline worked wonders on dulling the pain and giving me a semi-clear mind to focus on what to do in order to survive. I heard shouts, and I felt more than I saw, the battle commence around me. Praise to the goggle gods that my backpack was still on me, so I was able to take out my emergency medical supplies. With extremely shaky hands, I pulled out the emergency syringe and jabbed it into my chest, rain-flatting my lung. It caused enough immediate relief that I took a staggering breath and worked to remove my ribs from my lung and heal the tissue. I wouldn't be able to repair the broken bones properly in the current environment, but I could deal with that pain. The holes were small enough so that they would have been able to heal on their own given enough time, and my body all too happily regrew under my Shozen. I calcified my ribs so they would not break off, but I'll have to re-break my ribs to set them properly, I thought with a grimace. Once the immediate threat to my life was taken care of, I took stock of the rest of my injuries. My right shoulder was dislocated, holy hell that hurts, and either my hip was out of place or fractured, and my back felt like it was going to be a big angry bruise for a month. None of which were life-threatening, so I ignored them in favor of finding my teammates. I could not have been distracted for more than a minute, and already Naruto and Sasuke were unconscious and Orochimaru was gone. I tried to stand back up, but my hip protested so much that I had to pop it back into place myself before doing anything else. I bit hard on my bottom lip to keep from crying out as I heard the pop from twisting my hip back into place. I took a few moments to recollect myself before forcing myself to stand up and hobble over to Naruto. I sent a jolt of chakra into his system, in hopes of awaking him, and I was pleasantly surprised when he gave a low groan. The hero opened his eyes, and blearily looked up at me. Sakura-chan. Hello. Do me a favor. He sat up, grimacing. Yeah, what's up? Pop my shoulder back into place. Naruto nodded his head, then hesitated. I don't know how to do that. It's okay, I'll guide you, I reassured him. I leaned back on my butt, before sinking down onto the ground to lay flat on my back. Grab my right elbow with your right hand, and my right wrist with your left hand. Naruto tentatively did so, his clear blue eyes bright with obvious worry. Good. Now slow and steady, pull my arm away from my body. As he did so, I had to turn my head away and bit down hard on my lip and tongue. It took a couple of tries, but he was eventually able to pop it back into place. With that being settled, I did a quick diagnostic of Naruto. Damn grateful Kurama of the Fluff was already healing him, before I headed over to Sasuke. Disappointment flared through me before I pushed it aside. Sasuke had the curse mark. Despite heading straight towards the tower and only being a few hours away, Max Orochimaru still found us. He still headed straight towards us. Short of spilling everything to the Hokage and taking a trip to Tni, was there anything else I could have done to prevent that? I don't think so. Even then, that's not a guarantee Orochimaru won't find some other to get to Sasuke. We did the best we could under the circumstances, and with the criteria of, not wanting to die, yet. It was still frustrating. But frustration got me nowhere, and it wasn't a pleasant feeling, so away that went. Naruto squatted down on the opposite side of me, his brow furrowed as he looked at Sasuke. What do we do? It's unsafe to treat him out here, I said slowly. We're only a few hours away from the tower, so let's rush there. He should be okay until we get there. Then what? I'll take care of it. Don't worry about it. Naruto smiled brightly. Okay. I trust you, Sakura-chan. Unease settled in my stomach at his words for some reason. Naruto grabbed Sasuke's right arm and slung it over his shoulder. I did the same with Sasuke's left arm, and the two of us ran as fast as we could to the tower. As soon as we entered the tower, I ripped off my backpack and pulled out a heaven scroll and an earth scroll. Quickly, I unrolled both and placed them over one another. Within seconds, there was a puff of smoke and it was not Iruka who appeared in the smoke, but rather a young woman whose name I did not know. She wore her chinin attire well, with rainbow-dyed hair swept up into a bun in the back. She looked over each of us. Team 7. I nodded for us, hearing Naruto grunt as he shifted his hold over our unconscious teammate. She smirked at us. Congrats on being the first to the tower. Your buddy gonna make it. We ran into Orochimaru in the forest, I said, watching closely as her face paled and her eyes widened. He left a gift for our teammate, and we're going to require a sealing team for him. She shifted uneasily at my words. It would be a violation of the rules if teams were granted outside medical assistance until the second part is complete. Tell our sensei, then, so he can prepare the sealing immediately afterwards. Right, the Chunin agreed. Well, you all have free reign of the tower until the 5 days are up. Kitchen is on the second floor, and dorms are floors 3 through 7. Once more, I nodded my head at that. The Chunin disappeared in a puff of smoke, and I helped Naruto carry Sasuke upstairs. We dumped our feverish teammate onto a bed, and then it was time to work. See this mark here? I asked Naruto, pointing towards the curse mark. Naruto pulled up a chair to sit beside me while I worked on Sasuke. He nodded his head. It's some kind of seal. According to my diagnosis and what I can tell from Shosen, it's forcing itself into Sasuke's chakra network. Naruto paled. That's bad, right? Yes, I agreed quietly. Unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about it right now. Neither of us are Fuinjutsu experts, and my medical expertise can only go so far. What we can do is help flush out the toxic chakra it's emitting into his system, and keep his fever down. Is there something I can do? Naruto asked me. Yes. Keep giving him chakra pills, an anti-inflammatory medication. We'll change his cooling pack every hour, too. If it gets too bad, we'll have to give him an ice bath. He's going to be okay, though, right? I hesitated. He's going to have a tough time, but I believe he'll be okay in the end. Naruto? The curse mark is affecting his nervous system, as well. Well, you know how you sometimes go berserk when you use Kurama's chakra. The ball of sunshine cocked his head at me. What? The Kyuubi. You know. What kind of self-appointed mother would I be, if I didn't know? I retorted. But you understand what I'm talking about, yeah? At his nod, I continued, well, Sasuke is going to have go through something similar. If too much of that thing's chakra is released into his system at once, it'll cause him to go a bit crazy. It'll be up to us to stop him, and calm him down. It's not entirely his fault, though, so don't take anything he says or does personal when he's like that. Naruto punched his left palm, a grin on his face. I can do that. If that's all there is to worry about, then everything really is going to be okay. I couldn't resist smiling at that. Yes. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to re-break some bones and do a bit of damage control for myself. If you hear me scream, please pretend you heard nothing. He grimaced. Yeah. Okay. Unfortunately, some of my injuries required an extra set of hands. I had to have Naruto wrap the bandages around my chest and back. He was extremely uncomfortable with it, but understood the necessity and acted like a complete gentleman, because I couldn't friggin' move after re-breaking a couple of ribs. I had a whole bunch of scratches and gashes and all sorts of fun shit covering my back, so I had to dress it somehow until I could finagle a way to heal my back. A shoulder after being dislocated recently did not want to move much. Sasuke floated in and out of consciousness. The first time he woke up semi-coherent, Naruto and I reassured him that he was in a safe place and didn't have to fight. That seemed to trigger his body to shut down and focus entirely on recuperating from Orochimaru's brief encounter. He didn't become coherent until it was time for the preliminary exams. Gaara's team had arrived a couple hours after our team. Apparently I had taken out enough of the competition that it took a couple of tries to find a team that didn't have a duplicate. Oopsie. Hinata's team came later that night. I greeted them with hugs. Hinata figured out the duplicates were because of me. I had left tiny little flowers in the corner of the duplicates and she watched me work my magic before entering the forest, and explained it to her teammates. Kiba was quite put off with me because it took them multiple tries to find a team that didn't have a duplicate, while Shino praised me on my cunning. Hinata just smiled at me, and pinched my cheek, citing, "If I didn't like you so much, I might have been annoyed." I giggled at that and responded with, "Lies. You're too full of goodness and love to be annoyed with anyone." She shook her head in response. Team 8 hung around our room, Hinata happily assisting to help care for Sasuke. Kiba and Naruto enjoyed bantering with one another, and the boisterous genin listened to each other's stories of what their teams had been up to for the past couple of months since academy days. I had Hinata redress my wounds over the next couple of days until I could move my shoulder enough to use Shosen on my back. Some of the injuries would leave behind barely visible scars. It would make for a hell of a cool story. "Oh, how did you get that scar?" someone would ask. "I got in a fight with Orochi friggin' Maru. And lived." Holy Arceus, that is badass. I know. Quite the story, indeed. Team 9 showed up after the third day into the exam, well into the night, followed shortly by Otogaku's team. On the fourth day, looking extremely worse for wear, Team 10 arrived. On the same day, I also kidnapped Hinata to help me booby trap a certain room I found. With the reunion of all the rookies, all of us stayed close. Guy's team seemed to be held off in semi-isolation likely demanded by Neji, and to a lesser extent Tenten. I healed up what injuries I could, and Hinata dressed/stitched the injuries I could not. The rest of our time passed by in a very relaxed state. The fifth day all of us stayed in our rooms and rested in preparation for the next step of the exam. Then came 2 in the afternoon, and each team received a message to meet in the very same room I had, by complete coincidence, I'm sure, booby-trapped. Things were about to go get exciting again. Checking in with Kakashi. Third-person POV. Kakashi joined the rest of the Konoha instructors in the surveillance room to monitor the first part of the exams. His longtime friend, and self-appointed rival, Guy greeted him with a cheerful wave and a blinding smile. "My friend. I was not aware your team would be a part of the exams. It was made apparent to me early on that they would want to participate," Kakashi answered, shoving his hands in his pockets. "Hokage-sama was also interested in one of my minions becoming a Chunin." Asuma snorted. "Let me guess, Naruto." "No," Kakashi responded quietly, thinking back to the evil glint in Hiruzen's eyes at the thought of a certain Pinkette having unlimited access to the Icha-Icha series. The evil man had chortled, merrily smiling as he said with an all-too-straight face, "She would be good for you, Kakashi-kun. She seems very fun. She's 12. For now," Hiruzen agreed, still smiling evilly. There was no way he actually thought that Kakashi would even consider being with someone so young, but the man openly enjoyed the fact that the aspiring medic could make her sensei squirm. Hiruzen was a firm believer in shinobi expressing their emotions, when not on missions, of course, and not turning into mindless tools, and the fact that she brought out honest reactions and feelings from the emotionally repressed retired Umbu made Hiruzen hopeful for his subordinate. Kurenai frowned at Kakashi's response. "He favors the Uchiha, then." Kakashi mutely shook his head. Guy chuckled. "I am not surprised. Kakashi's fair maiden is most surprising. She brims with youthful enthusiasm." "She is not my fair maiden," Kakashi corrected. "She is my minion. An evil, perverted minion." "Hinata-chan thinks highly of Sakura-chan," Kurenai said slowly. "Surely, you must be exaggerating." Kakashi gave her a look as if patronizing a child. Kurenai flushed, looking away in a huff. "You were never good with Kunoichi. You probably don't know how to handle her, the poor girl." "I'm the victim here," Kakashi protested. "She's worse than Jiraiya." "No way," Asuma immediately denied. "No one is worse than him." "She is," Kakashi insisted. Asuma turned towards the surveillance screen, squinting at the group of genin. That girl, right there? The one that's hugging her friends. She's a pervert. Kakashi nodded firmly. The only reason she wants to be a Chunin is to purchase Icha. I don't believe that, Kurenai declared. Kakashi gave her another look, causing the Kunoichi to glare balefully at him. The instructors watched the footage for another moment, before another genin approached the group. Sakura immediately took off her right shoe and threw it at him, her face contorting into a look Kakashi had honestly never seen on his minion before. The look of sheer hatred on her face was unsettling. He had only ever seen smiles, and the occasional wince from his casual rejections. The other genin seemed equally surprised by the venomous looks, and likely words, she threw towards the silver-haired genin. Only until the genin had left, did she flip a switch and turn back into cheerful young girl. Who was that? Kurenai asked, looking over at Kakashi. Kakashi didn't have an answer. But he would soon enough. Yo, Kakashi greeted casually. His team had entered the Forest of Death yesterday, so he would not be seeing them for another few days. He planned on spending that time relaxing with light training thrown in, but Ibiki had requested to meet with him. The scarred interrogator took a seat beside Kakashi at the bar they sat at, a single paper in hand. He slammed said paper on the counter, a scowl on his face. Who the hell are the Goggle Gods? Kakashi blinked at that, then looked down. He recognized Sakura's drawings, although he did not recognize who she drew except Obito? How did she know Obito? Surely, no one would tell her about that tidbit of information about him. People knew better than to talk about Kakashi's past, and her curly handwriting. He read the message at the bottom of the paper, and resisted the urge to snort and bury his face in his hands. He settled for shaking his head. I don't know. How did she know about my exam? I literally came up with it that morning, Ibiki demanded. The Goggle Gods is the term Sakura uses to explain away anything she figures out, Kakashi explained. She has a very high natural intuition. She likely saw through your exam, then explained it away through her gods. Ibiki's eyes narrowed. Really? That is the most likely scenario, Kakashi allowed. I don't have any obvious proof, but I can confirm she doesn't have any hidden Kekai Genkai, nor do these Goggle Gods actually exist. Ibiki snorted. He supposed that it did make sense. No one could keep things hidden from the Hatake Kakashi, so if there was something odd about Sakura, the famed Jonin would have figured it out by now. That being said, Ibiki still had a gut feeling that there was something a bit more to the story. Without definitive proof, though, Ibiki wouldn't push the retired Umbu. Well, not about that, anyway. With a smirk, Ibiki flipped over the paper. Care to share, Hatake? Kakashi stared at Sakura's picture of their wedding for a solid minute, before he took a long swig of his sake, and buried his face in his arms. You have 10 seconds to leave, and take that atrocity with you, before I break that damn jaw of yours. Ibiki smirked, obliging the embarrassed man. That's it for part 3. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.